prayer chaplains. If they would stand, we want to acknowledge you. And the ambassadors are wearing the rainbow ribbons, and they're here to answer questions that you may have about Spiritual Life Center, ways that you get connected with the community. And so we thank them for their hospitality that they provide for all those who are here, whether they're new or old. And then, of course, we have our prayer chaplains that are here to hold confidential prayer during your journeys of challenges. And they're wearing the white stoles, and they'll pray with you immediately after the service here or in the courtyard. And also, I forgot to mention our board of trustees who happen to be here this morning as well. We appreciate them. They also serve as kind of like ambassadors extra, ambassadors squared. Yes.
But they're not a bunch of squares,
yes.
So don't get confused.
They're here to answer questions you may have as well. So thank them for your service and all that you provide for Spiritual Life Center.
And if you're here for the very first time today, in a moment we're going to ask you to raise your hand. But for now, we really want you to know that there are opportunities for becoming connected here. So if you fill out the welcome card that they will hand you, drop it in the offering basket or take it directly out to the welcome table. In the courtyard there'll be a very welcome a gift for you. So raise your hand now if you're here for the very first time and keep it up.
First timers here? Just raise keep your hand
no
up.
salesman will call.
Yes, thank you for keeping your hand up.
And we are going to give you a shell lay, and on the shell lay is a tag that says, "We believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and there are many paths to the one God."
So we are grateful for your presence today, and we have an opportunity to greet those who are here for the first time as well as each other. So at this time, I invite you to greet a person nearby and just say, "You are marvelous. Glad you are here."
We invite you to stay standing and join us in singing our group song.
Oh
seated.
So at this time, we are going to speak together our community cue, shadow qualities, and all those beautiful qualities that we've determined as a community that we have come here to be, as individuals and collectively. So please speak those together with me. Please have compassion for us when we are being not enough, distrusting, grieving, blaming, powerless, and fearful, because this is who we have come here to be, inspired, in integrity, joy-filled, compassionate, unstoppable, generous, and transformational. And now we unfold all those beautiful qualities as we read together our vision statement. Spiritual Life Center is a loving, vibrant family that welcomes home all people and accepts everyone, no exceptions. Weaving ancient spiritual traditions with emerging wisdom, we cultivate a spiritual deepening with the divine, each other, and our planet. And now, in preparation for meditation, we sing the chant, all good, all good.
I invite you to take a nice deep breath and settle into your chair. Because it's all good. All good, holy, holy. All good, holy, holy. Sing with me now. All good, holy, holy. All in my mind. All in my mind. In my heart, in my soul. Let me know all is good. Holy, holy. All love. All love, all love. Holy, holy. All love. All love, all love. Holy, holy. All in my mind. All in my heart. In my heart. And in my soul. Let me know all is love. Holy, holy. All one. All one, all one. Holy, holy. All one. All one, all one. Holy, holy. All in my mind. All in my mind. And in my heart. And in my soul. Let me know all is one. Holy, holy. All God. All God, all God. Holy, holy. All God. All God, all God. Holy. All in my mind. All in my heart. In my heart, in my soul. Let me know. Let me know all is holy, holy. All good, all good, all good. Holy, holy. All good, all good, all good. Holy, holy. All in my mind. All in my heart. In my heart, in my soul. Let me know all is good.
Let us move into this time of quiet and contemplation by taking a slow breath. Inhale slowly and exhale even more slowly. Calm your mind and your body. And with each breath, release tensions or concerns and relax deeply into your chair. Allow your consciousness to drift until you feel as if you're floating on a gentle breeze in a vast sky dotted with fluffy clouds that occasionally pass across the sun and then move on. It is quiet and very restful to simply drift along with the clouds. And idly you start to assign names to the shapes of the clouds. The small cloud right in front of you looks like a puppy crouched to play. The one over there looks like a giant bird in flight. A scattering of small clouds looks like something like a duck, followed by her little ducklings. And you drift and just continue to play the cloud game. And then the breeze picks up, and some of the clouds rearrange themselves. They give up their shapes, and they reform into a larger, more defined form. This one looks exactly like an angel. A soft voice in your mind tells you that this is not a cloud. It's a real angel. As if in answer to that mental thought, the angel raises its arms in a welcoming gesture and says, "Welcome home. We are happy to be with you again." The angel knows you. It knows exactly who you are. And now you begin to become aware that some of the other clouds have also changed form. You are surrounded by angels and holy beings. They are in front of you. They are behind you. They are to the right of you. They are to the left of you. And they are above you. And they are below you. They hold you in a cocoon of love. As one, the angels begin to move upward, carrying you safely in your cocoon, higher and higher until all around you is pure light. The pure light of the one source that emanates from the center of the universe. The angels slow their upward motion and then move away from you so that you freely float in your cocoon. The light becomes brighter and brighter until it permeates your very being, and you are light, and light is you. And you know in your heart oneness, and oneness knows you. In this moment, you know that you are never alone, that you are not a stranger. You see and feel that you live within the embrace of the one light, one love, one truth. And revel in this recognition as the one true light dances in and through you in the silence. Now the angels gather around you to bring you gently back to your physical body. And as you become aware of the chair underneath you and of your breathing, receive this blessing. Oh, my beloved, it is written in the book of Isaiah, "See, I have written your name on the palms of my hands." You are a holy being, and holy always recognizes holy. You are known. You are loved. You are never alone. Remember this always.
It still amazes me that I am your friend. So now I pour out my heart to you. Here in your presence, I am made new. So now I pour out my heart to you. I give you my heart, Lord. Here in your presence, I am made new. Sing with me now. You know my name. Yes, you do. You know my name. You know every little thing about me. You know my name. Oh, you know my name. And oh, how you walk with me. Just a closer walk with you. And oh, No battle can turn me. No mountain is gonna stop me. 'Cause you hold my hand. Oh, I'm walking in your victory. 'Cause your power is within me. No giant will defeat me. 'Cause you hold my hand. And on fire, and you burn me. Oh, no battle and turn me. No mountain stop me. 'Cause you're holding my hand. I'm walking in your victory. 'Cause your power is within me. No giant will defeat me. 'Cause you're always holding my hand. No fire. No, 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 no battle. Oh, no mountain. You're always holding my hand. I'm walking in your victory. 'Cause your power is within me. No giant can defeat me. 'Cause you're holding my hand. You hold my hand. I don't have to be afraid. Hold my hand. 'Cause you're always holding my hand. Oh, you're holding. You're holding. You hold my hand. You hold my hand. You got my feet. You point the way. You're in me now. You're in me now. You hold my hand. You know my name. You know my name. You know my, oh, you know my name. You know my name. Oh, how you walk with me. How you walk with me. Even when I don't feel it sometimes. Oh, how you talk with me, and you always tell me. Oh, how you tell me that I am your own. Yeah.
I think, just take that in for a moment. Deborah was saying something to the effect that, well, we probably could just go home right after that. You know, after all, where do you go from up? Well, welcome. Sometimes I'm riding on the local highway. I think it was Highway 50, and I always see this guy pretty regularly. He's like up on the bridge that goes across the highway. And he's waving a sign, and I see him regularly. You know, it doesn't matter. If it's raining, he's there. If it's sunny, he's there. If it's 100 degrees out there, he's there. And I'm thinking, is somebody taking advantage of this guy to do this advertising? And then I said, well, what is he promoting? You know, I'm looking, I look close, and then I see the sign, and he also has a T-shirt on, and it's a reference to a Bible scripture. And it says, you may have seen this at the end of the end zones in the football games. It says, John 3:16. And of course, I have my own interpretation of what that means, but that statement says something to the effect that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. You may have heard that in the traditional churches. And we take a different take on that. Meister Eckhart, who was a great mystic and theologian, said something to the effect that God only begot one son or daughter, if you want to update it. But he said the eternal is forever begetting the only begotten. And of course, the only begotten are the qualities of God, the qualities of the Christ presence. That presence is always within each and every one of us. And it's not limited to any one person. But as that song says, it's in every one of us. And so this begotten nature is being repeated over and over and over and over again. It is the gift of the eternal, as we talked about last week. It's a gift that keeps on giving. And in some way, shape, or form, in what we have here in these teachings, we're touching on that all the time from different angles. Reminding us, because we come here to be reminded of something we already know, that there's a great power, there's a presence within us, and that we're representing this if we're conscious of it. And so that eternal something is that divinity within us. And regardless of how we may worship this presence, the outer symbology may not be the same. It may be different depending upon the path. The inner meaning for all of us is the same. The message is the same. And so it's reminding us of who and what we really are. And we want to take back what I call our holy name, our true nature, our true identity. You know, there's a story, since it's Christmas month, about Jesus. I talk about him a lot. And he was hanging out with some of his disciples, you know, after he had done a few miracles, I guess that day, he decided to chill out. And his disciples were around, and he decided to ask him, well, who do people say that I am? In other words, what's the 411 on the street about me? What are they saying? And they said, well, some people say that you're John the Baptist has come back, or Jeremiah or some other prophet of old, which kind of reminded me that, hey, these folks believe that there was a time that the soul continued on. And then he decided to ask the disciples themselves, well, who do you think I am? And then Simon said, Simon said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said to him, blessed Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood did not tell that to you. There's something within you that reminded me of who I really am. And he was talking about that. Upon this I shall build my church, upon this rock. In other words, this idea of the Christ presence is what I'm going to build this whole movement on. So I think Simon was the original Rocky. He said, you know, you're Rocky. If you understand what I'm saying here. The Christ is that God within all of us. It's an idea of a vision of peace and love and compassion. All the qualities of this presence we possess because we are its representation. Some people have a problem with that word, but we can substitute it with other things. We could say the spark of divinity. We can call it the spirit within. We can use the Star Wars term, the force. Whatever we call it, our job is to call it forth as the activity of our awareness. And we have to recognize that. We have to remember our identity. I was thinking about, when I was watching the original Batman. I think Michael Keaton was the original Batman. And he was going through some experiences, and he was with the bad guys, and he was doing all kinds of heroic things. And they were stunned, and they asked him this question, who are you? And Michael Keaton said, I'm Batman, okay? I'm Batman. I like that line, I'm Batman. But Deborah had quoted something from the book of Isaiah. We didn't coordinate this, but we had the same thought about our name. Who are we as human beings, as spiritual beings? And Jesus quoted this in the Bible when he talked about, and I think he loved the book of Isaiah because he quoted that more than any other prophet. But he's talking about the idea that your name is branded upon the palm of God's hand. And of course, the name means nature, our true identity. Our identity is branded in the palm of God's hand, at least figuratively, not literally. And so the Godhead looks at his hand, and if it could, it would see our name on it as a unique expression of itself. And it's trying to tell us that you're important, you matter, you're significant. And no matter what label they may have given you, what name they may have called you from the outside, doesn't matter how many letters they have after their name, if it's not child of God, if it's not emanation of God, then it's the wrong label. And we forget about it. There was a young man named, I think his name was Kalen Bennett. He was from Illinois, Little Rock, Arkansas, I believe, as I remember. And he was born autistic. And of course, because he had a level of autism that said that, he was not going to be able to speak. He was going to be nonverbal all of his life. And he actually didn't start walking until he was about 4 years old. He didn't start talking until he was around 7. He did start talking. And the outlook for his life was considered very bleak. And he had a doctor or a therapist that, said that, he's going to be basically restricted to a life of struggle. He'll never play any kind of sports, that he's probably going to have problems in school, that he won't be able to really make friends very well because of his condition. And most people would have probably accepted that and let that define who they really are. But Kalen and his mother had a different perspective. And over time, they began to see him differently. And ultimately, he excelled in school. He did, in fact, graduate on time. And he learned how to play 5 instruments. And ultimately, he became a basketball phenomenon. And he was big. He was like 6'10", 300 pounds, and had 20, his shoes were 20. He wore a size 20 shoe. So he was ready. But he was the first autistic athlete to get a Division I scholarship in college. I think individuals come through school, maybe the basketball players, 1 in 100 will go to that level. 1 in 200 will get a full ride. But 1 in maybe 3 million who is autistic would actually be that person. And he was that individual. And on the day of his graduation, he ran into that therapist that had that interpretation of him, what his life was going to be, how she had seen him going to evolve. And he asked her, "Are you the one that said that I would not be able to achieve in my life?" And the therapist said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Well, I hope you haven't told anyone else that. Because if they believed it, it could possibly ruin their life." Who we really are is far more powerful than any label that anyone gives us. And I think the Christmas story is a reminder of how powerful our true nature is. And we're here to really celebrate that true nature each and every time and each and every day because it represents our potential. But we have to be willing to accept that. We have to be able to see that for ourselves because we can never go beyond our own self-concept. We can never go beyond how we see ourselves. There was a teacher in, I think, Baltimore, Maryland. And she was in a very challenging environment because she taught for what they call Teach for America. And some of the brightest students that graduated from college go to many challenging neighborhoods to teach. And she knew that most of those students went through lots of problems, lots of challenges. And one day, rather than do math, she said that what we're going to do today, I'm going to have everybody draw their future. Just draw their future. So she handed out crayons and she handed out paper to all of the students. And there was one child who didn't do anything. It was a little boy. He was just sitting in the corner and he did nothing. And maybe like 20 minutes went by and he did nothing at all. And then all of a sudden his eyes perked up and he started drawing. And he drew ferociously. And at the end of the class, when everyone was handing in their papers, she took his out to look at it to see what he had drawn. And she saw that he had drawn what they call a pizza delivery man. That was his biggest dream. And she was concerned about that, so she called up the boy's mother and expressed what had happened. And she said, "Well, I wasn't surprised because of all the men in his life, the only one that she knew that was either not dead or not in jail was his uncle. And his uncle just happened to be a delivery man. And he saw that as a possibility for himself. That was his highest representation or his highest identity for himself. Imagine how much more he would have been if he had seen other models around him as to what could be possible. You know, understand, I think people who live extraordinary lives are ordinary people with extraordinary thought practices. And I think what they do, they expand their perception of themselves. They expand what's possible for themselves. And sometimes it just takes a small shift in how we see ourselves to make a big difference in our life. You know, sometimes people will say to us that things are impossible, but as one person said, you know, the words "I am possible" are in the words impossible. Just that shift can change the whole way that we see ourselves. And it can lead to extraordinary things in our life to bring forth that potential that we call the Christ presence within us. You know, I think in further to birth this Christ presence, to really take back our holy name, to realize who we really are, we have to release the joy inhibitors, the light inhibitors, the peace inhibitors that are hindering this flow of good and potential from coming forth. And Jesus gave up one of those ideas. He gave us a lot of what I call guidelines, or as one person said to me, they're God lines. God lines for evolving how we can become in our lives. And he said the measure you give is the measure you get back. And so we want to be able to give out. You know, there's a restaurant in Washington, D.C. called Busboy and Poets. It's kind of an eccentric kind of, I think we would fit very well in that. You know, because not only have great food, but, you know, they have poetry going on at the same time and people doing all kinds of artistic work. And there was a waiter in there, a server. And she had a very, kind of one political persuasion. She had some customers that came in with a completely different political persuasion, but they got along very well. Despite the fact that they were on different ends of the political spectrum, they engaged in a conversation. They kind of enjoyed each other's company. And at the end of the meal, the gentleman who was there and was served by her gave her a big tip. Gave her a $450 tip on a $72 tab. That's what I call a big tipper. And one of the things that the young lady said was, there are a lot of people that she runs into, and they have different perspectives, but they were really able to get along. And he wrote a note on the receipt that, you know, despite the way that we see things differently, we really are one. And if every individual could express a smile that you've been expressing, communicate like you were communicating, we will demonstrate who and what we really are. Because we're not our political parties, we're not our history. There's something within us that transcends all of that. You know, sometimes it's difficult to give on that level. Because oftentimes we come around Christmas time because what becomes important are the prophets or prophets rather than the message from the prophets. But we're here to take the message of the prophets to bring forth the qualities of God. But sometimes it's challenging, as Don Miguel Ruiz once noted, that, you know, sometimes we get caught up in the dream-like hypnotism. It moves through the air, and we become prey to those beliefs around us. And I was reading some of the prayer requests, otherwise known as the news, that comes on. That's all they are. When things come up, that's weird. Those are just prayer requests from the universe. This is what we're supposed to be praying about. And there's never a lack of anything to pray for, to tell you the truth. And one thing caught my attention was an article one was about medicine, the other one was about, hospitals. And there was an actor who was talking about he would go to meetings and they would be pitching their scripts. And he thought it was all about art, about creativity. But ultimately, it became about the bottom line. And he couldn't tell the difference between a pitch meeting at a stockholders meeting or whether or not he was actually there to do something creative. And oftentimes he says it leaves artists on the outside doing independent things rather than an industry being really focused on art and beauty and love and inspiration. And it denigrates itself to merely profits. And that's why, of course, there's nothing wrong with making money. That's a good thing because the real purpose of any business is to deliver a service. The medical model is about healing. The artistic model is about displaying the good of God, the sounds of the Spirit that comes from having an intimate at-one-ment with this presence. And we're here to be those kind of great givers and really reclaim our holy name so we radiate those qualities. But I think there's something else that the Christ presence reminded us that we need to do in order to reclaim our holy name, to really bring forth our true nature. Jesus said we must live by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. It simply means that complaining and whining and moaning, no one does that, but you probably know people like that. Goes right out of our way of being. You know, some people, if they were asked not to complain, they wouldn't know what to say. It'd be like I say, a Quaker meeting, quiet, no words. But as, how should I say, Bob Marley said that complaining is living life backwards. It's blocking the flow of good. It's blocking that gift of the eternal. It's blocking our true name of the Christ being out. Because we know that, thoughts held in mind begin to produce after their kind because they produce into our experiences. That whatever we complain about, it becomes our very life. It becomes more real than what our true nature is for us at times. And oftentimes people become a prophet of doom in their own life, and their story is one of complaining, and that leads to their experience, and that begins to rewire our whole brain. Because whatever we complain about, it will begin to happen. And we'll be running around saying, I have the power of prophecy. Everything that goes wrong in my life, ta-da, there it is. I see negative things in my life, boom, it happens. Everybody hates me. Yes, they do. We're living life backwards if we're speaking that way. But we don't want to do that. We want to live the life of the Christ presence, our true nature and being, and say, thank you, God, for my life. Thank you for waking me up this morning. Thank you for helping me breathe. Thank you for letting me capture the vision of my high possibility. This is taking back our holy name, our holy nature, and living by the word that cometh out of the mouth of God. There's no definitive how-tos, but I think there's one thing that's always very important if we really want to bring forth our whole nature, our true nature and being, and that is to practice this idea of loving our neighbor. The Christmas season is really about bringing forth peace on earth and goodwill toward all. And believe when we do that, we're not talking about doing it in a general sense, but we have to do it specifically. It's easy to say that generally, but when specific things come up, it's a little more challenging. There was a young man who was being sentenced. I believe he was in Kentucky. And he was charged with, taking the life of another young man who was a pizza delivery person. And at the sentencing, the father of the victim came to testify. And everybody thought that he was going to have the judge throw the book at him, give him the most harsh sentence possible, that somehow he can get back at him. But he didn't do anything like that. He actually got up, and when he was testifying, he said to the court that he just was able to put himself in the shoes of that man who was on trial. And he knew about his background and the challenges that he had come up with in his life. And although he felt the crucifixion, the sting of the crucifixion of the loss of his son, that he came here that day to forgive him totally and completely. And he just wanted to know if anyone else was involved, caused the death of his son. And it was such an emotional experience that the judge had to take a recess because she was crying and sobbing based upon his compassion, his understanding, his ability to put himself in another person's shoes and to forgive despite all of the things within our human nature that would say to do the opposite. I think the Christmas season is to remind us we're here to take a stand for those qualities, to be the modern day Prince of Peace, the modern day princesses of peace, to stand for peace on earth and goodwill toward all. So as we close out about today, about the spirit of the Christmas season and taking back our holy name, it's really about being in absolute alignment with the great visionaries that have blessed the planet, those who have come before us, those who have prophesied the high possibilities of the human spirit, the human experience. And the Christmas season is really to remind us we're here to stand in alignment with that kind of vibration, with that kind of frequency, that kind of energy. And we're seeking to birth that divine vision that is there for each and every one of us. As I said, it's peace on earth, goodwill toward all, as articulated by Jesus the Christ, as articulated by Martin Luther King, who called it the beloved community. So in this spirit of this season, we are here to be reminded, we're here to stand in alignment with John in the Bible, who relegated to the Isle of Patmos, and he captured a vision of the new heaven and the new earth. We're here to stand with that writer of the book of Isaiah who spoke about the lion lying down with the lamb and how we can ultimately study war no more. That every tear shall be wiped away and there shall be peace in the land. We're here to stand with that character in the book of Daniel that prophesied there would indeed be peace and harmony on the planet. And we stand with Mahatma Gandhi that acknowledge and inspire us to have a divine and appreciation for each other, regardless of what the outer differences may be. And we stand with people like Mother Teresa, who was so enamored and worked for her beloved master teacher, Jesus the Christ, that she saw that Christ presence in every face that she fed. And we stand with individuals like the Holiness Dalai Lama that reveal such a level of forgiveness and loving kindness that there was not a derogatory word that came out of his mouth toward the Chinese government despite the oppression that they had experienced. We stand with individuals like Nelson Mandela, who was in prison for 27 years. And the moment that he walked out, there was a power of reconciliation to build a new nation. The Christmas season is reminding us we're here to stand in sync with that kind of vision, that kind of vibration, that kind of essence. Of course, those people that we mentioned, we may look at them as being special or some sort of gargantuan way. But they were ordinary men, ordinary women, like all of us, who became so pure at heart, who claimed who they really were, that we acknowledge them today. And as we express those qualities, when we take back our holy name, we'll be living our true nature, expressing our true identity, and expressing the divine presence that we all have that's being repeated over and over and over and over again. Should we accept it? That's our mission. Peace and blessings to you. All right. As we take this time to prepare for our gifts and love offering, let us remember that we are in sync with that divine principle that whatever we give comes back to us. Today it's materially, but also we give peace and love and joy and wisdom and make that the activity of our consciousness so that we bring that into our world. So as the ushers are coming forward to receive the gifts and offerings that you have this morning, let us take in these words from our offertory blessing and really say them as if they're being said for the first time and realize the truth of what they mean. Let us say it together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have and all that I circulate. Thank you, God.
I'm gonna make a wish this Christmas. I'm gonna say a little prayer. I'm gonna stop here for a moment before the moment disappears. The world's in a hurry this December. The city streets and shopping malls. I wished we could slow down and remember the meaning of it all. Wherever you are, no matter how far, come back to the heart of Christmas. Live while you can, cherish the moment, and the ones that you love, make sure they know it. Don't miss it. The heart of Christmas. Let's make it feel the way it used to. Let's find the wonder of a child. You can see the magic all around you. Come on and open up your eyes. You can find it in the warm embrace of your family, or calling up a long-lost friend. You can even find it in the eyes of a stranger when you reach out a helping hand. Wherever you are, no matter how far, come back to the heart of Christmas. Live while you can, cherish the moment, and the ones that you love, make sure they know it, and don't miss it. The heart of Christmas. In the shadow of a steeple, in a star that lights the way, you will find him in the manger. The heart of Christmas has a name. I'm gonna make a wish this Christmas. I'm gonna say a little prayer. Wherever you are, no matter how far, come back to the heart of Christmas. Live while you can, cherish the moment, and the ones that you love, make sure they know it. Wherever you are, no matter how far, come back to the heart of Christmas. Live while you can, cherish the moment, and the ones that you love, make sure they know it. And don't miss it. The heart of Christmas.
Thank you. Oh, Christmas tree.
The heart of Christmas. We take those principles of Christmas and take them to heart as we bless the tithes and offerings to spread the joys of Christmas every day. And so we're grateful and thankful to have this opportunity to be those vessels and vehicles of these ideas and anchor in our life and in our world. Thank you, God. Amen. And with that, let's join together and sing our peace song. And now let us join in and say our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, I am, and all is well. Peace and blessings to you as you reclaim and take back your